He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Te hewa mauri ora ki te whaiau ki te o marama e te iwi no mai rā. Welcome back to this, our Māpuna podcast, where our special guest this week is another artist, a painter, self-labelled as it is, Sandy Adsett. We are at his home in Mayfair, Hastings, in the Hawke's Bay, where he has been based for the last 23 years, running the course called Tōmairangi, developing the future of Māori art. We discuss his life, his upbringing in the small town of Raupunga, his whānau, and why art is his passion, and in particular, why he calls himself a painter and not an artist. What motivates him? Why is his work so distinctive? And we also talk about the necessity for Māori in Māori art. It was a special privilege and honour to be able to sit down with Matua Sandy, who also went to Te Aute College, although Te Aute College almost did him a disservice with his art. So as I said, here is our kōrero with Sandy Adsett at his home in the Hawke's Bay, whakarongo mai. So to begin with, let's start right at the beginning, because Sandy Adsett is an interesting name. Where does the name Sandy come from?
I was named after the child of this cousin who had died 6 months before, and I know that my grandfather, Pākehā grandfather, wouldn't like the idea of me being named after a child that had died.
Yeah.
So his brother, my grandfather's brother, was Alexander, and he came back from the war, and he was shell shocked, and he had a sad life because he virtually just walked around mumbling. He was in the war the whole time.
World War One.
World War One, and Sandy is the shortened form of Alexander. Yeah, and so that's how the name came about. So I was called Raymond and Henry Adsett, and that was Mum's father's name. I said, why don't you call me Henry later, because his name was Henry. So anyway, eventually I changed my name and just by deed poll, and I'm now just Sandy Adsett. I didn't put any other name, I just left it like that.
And the name Adsett, where is that from?
Oh, it's from England. Yeah, and they were sawyers, I think. They came out and to live in, and they sawed timber.
Oh, yeah.
And so and that's where my grandmother met the Adsett, and they got married.
They met where? Because you were brought up in Raupunga.
Yes.
So where did they meet?
Well, my grandmother, they lived in Wairau.
Yeah.
But they met down in Levin.
Oh.
And that because that's where the Adsett family was from.
Oh.
But it was an interesting family because the brother married a Māori, so there was the whakapapa for them came. There was quite a few that had married Māori, even though. And my grandfather was a great guy. He was really, really, really nice. But I know my mother, she said how the grandfather upset her once because he mentioned that if he had known my grandmother had as much Māori in her as she had, he wouldn't have married her, you see.
Oh, wow.
So it's sort of... But I know my grandfather, I didn't know all of that. And he was such a great guy and loving guy, so I got over... Oh, I didn't think of it,
In that way.
but for my mother it was something that was there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what people felt at the time.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about the way even Māori think about different iwi.
Yeah.
Sure. You're growing up. And judging by your reaction, you know what I'm talking about there, so we'll get to that. But so how do you end up in Raupunga, being born and brought up in Raupunga?
My mother, her father, they farmed on the other side, a very remote area, Tugamoki. It's way in land, and so they came when she came out, and she married my dad, and they had adjoining farms. My grandmother, and so they came out to Raupunga because they were opening up the farms at the back, and so they went to Kahungunu. There's a small village further on from Raupunga, up towards the Waikato Moana. It's on the escarpment of Waikato Moana, and so they all were cleared all these farms and then balloted out the farms to the ones that went there to clean. And so I was on a dairy farm, and that's where I was brought up, up at Kahungunu.
And for the uninitiated, where is Raupunga?
Raupunga is on the Mohaka River, and Mohaka River is like halfway between Napier and heading towards Gisborne. Yeah, so it's but it's Ngāti Pāho weta, and it's in its own right, its own hapu. It's quite a big area.
It's also a big hapu, isn't it?
Yes,
Ngāti
it
Pāho
is.
weta, the
Yeah.
Mohaka River, huge.
Yes. Well, at one stage, the Mohaka township, and there was a township, it had 3 pubs and everything. It was the biggest sort of settlement from Gisborne through to Napier. Wairoa was way smaller than Mohaka at the time, so it had a strong
Is that
history.
right? Wow,
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wairoa was smaller than Mohaka.
Yeah.
So who was your mother's family then?
My mother's family, her father was a Gemmell, and the Gemmell came out from the Pākehā. They came out from Scotland and went to Wairoa, and he was a bit of a rogue. He ended up being killed by the tūhoi because he married into the whānau, this Ketua. They didn't have second names during that time, but we know the lot of they're from the Kawiti line, and but she was taken away from this Scottish guy by Hamana Tiakiwa. He was one of the everybody has chiefs, but in this instance he was, and decided that my grandmother was too important for this Pākehā guy.
Right.
So she took it, but he ended up marrying an Apatu, which was a really high-born line in Wairoa anyway. Yeah. And until he got pushed out, ended up with a Ahoho woman, this Tūhoi, coming down from Tūhoi. So, and that's where apparently they called him Happy Jack. They said he was. They called him a happy diamond, that he was a diamond on the raft. Oh. So he was and he's written up in the books and everything. So very colourful. Wow. But he ended up being killed by his brother-in-law because they thought he was spying on them.
It's fascinating because all these names I've heard.
Yeah.
Through going to Te Aute. So you mentioned the Gemmells,
yeah.
You mentioned the Apatus, and there's a whole bunch of Nepe Apatus in Takapo, down south of Waipukuro there. Wow. Tell me about Raupunga. What was it like as a kid?
Well, everybody was, milking. So and like this, as I said, my Turi's ancestry married the chief. There was about 5 chiefs in a row, up there, because a lot of the land was, before these areas where we were, where they opened it up, and that was up in Anangata. We did that as a work scheme. So we were centred around anything to do with the marae, and that's how we gathered. And then the school started, and it was a native school. It became a native school, and so everybody worked there. So when you say what was it like, everybody was just living there. And we didn't know. I didn't know any difference until much later. I was in my 20s before I sort of moved out of a Māori community into one that I saw. Yeah.
Because Raupunga very, very kahungunu.
Yes.
Was there ever an expectation that you'd go into dairying or farming or stay at Raupunga, look after the farm?
Well, No, by the time I came along, anyway, Dad decided he wasn't the farmer. Mum was.
Okay.
Yeah, and all the stock and everything was really given by my mum's whānau family, and so we moved down to Raupunga, from Kaunguru to Raupunga,
Oh, yeah.
and then he built a picture theatre type of offering, and had a
Wait, build a
theatre
picture theatre?
Yeah, and he had one in Nuhaka and one at Tauranga. So he was quite a business type person in the end. He was very, but yeah. So he did that, and he ended up teaching woodwork at the school. Did a lot of it. Built when we were up on the farm. He built a dam to have to generate a water wheel. He built the water wheel so that it would charge the batteries that went up to the house, and so we could have electricity at night. Very, very weak, but still, and was able to pump water up to top tanks that spread out over the farm.
Wow.
So he was an entrepreneurial and a very creative guy, and yeah.
Is that where the art streak, talent, skill comes from?
I have no idea. Although his mother, she was an artist. She did these beautiful paintings of poppies and roses. It was
wow.
like finishing school type of stuff that she and her sister had done. And the other sister married one of the Winiatas from Levin. So they went down there as seamstresses, and so that art side was from my father's side, but Mum was pretty artistic herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know.
And this is where the audience may lose interest because we're going to start talking about Te Aute now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it might get a little bit,
that's right. Flowery.
intensive and flowery. Yeah, as it tends to when I'm doing interviews about Te
Yeah.
Aute. Was it always a fait accompli? You would go to Te Aute? How did you end up there?
My mother, or my uncle, was the Sam Gemmell, and he'd been to Te Aute, and he played football and everything. So there was that, and my older brother, who was 9 years older than me, and my sister was 5 years older, they went to Gisborne Rectory and Girls High. So I think Mum decided that, yes, I believe she thought, this kid's getting too Pākehā. They will send him off to this Māori school, and
Wait, two Pākehā in
to
Raupunga?
Pākehā.
How can you be two Pākehā in Raupunga?
Well, obviously I wasn't Māori enough that would go that way. And I don't know, but I say that, I'm saying that, but I know it was because of my
Your uncle.
my uncles.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few Gemmells that went to Te Aute College.
There were, yeah. You went to Te Aute in 1954.
Yes.
Your first year studying there. Who was there at the same time as you that we might know of now?
Well, you would know Mason Jury. The three juries, Ra Jury, Mason, and Eddie started a bit later. A lot of my mates, some of them have died now because they were ahead of us. Sam Rolliston, the Tātaurangi, the golfer.
Yes.
He went there.
Phil's father, Te Roi.
Yeah,
Te Roi,
he was there. Yeah, and I think especially the Pacific Island ones is, Viverley, this chap Paula Viverley, and he became the Commissioner of Police, and died in a plane crash as it was coming into. But Dad sent him back with a sewing machine because they, at that time they were the things that they were looking for there. So they were, when I say good, they were good people, and from different areas. I can't think of anyone from Ngāpuhi. But,
There were many of us, all right. It was a pretty bold move. To send the Ngāpuhi to Te Aute in those days, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Because Phil Tataurangi's dad, who was there at your time,
Yeah.
he's still got athletic records in the record books at Te Aute now.
He was a fast runner.
Yeah.
He was
And
great.
triple jump and long jump and everything.
No, he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow. Did Te Aute do you think, was there any influence in the art mahi, do you think? Or because I'm really interested to figure out how that came about.
When I went in 1954, there was an art teacher at Pākehā, and he for my first 6 months, and then he left, and he was a guy who, you know, he said, "Oh, well, we'll do some trees." We painted trees and everything. Then after that, I shouldn't be talking about. There was Barry Metcalf, and he came, and you see, he wasn't an art teacher, so he did his best, but really he was more interested in other things. So, and then we got he's a Marsden from up north, and all he did was he'd give us the questions in the school certificate papers, and he'd just say, these are the questions, answer those. He never taught us anything. So, and yet, you know, I liked art, so I did a lot of art. So, you know, they gave me like, I got 92, you know, in my fifth form for art. Came to school certificate, I got 56. That's how big a difference was, you know, in what was art and what we were expected and thought were art, which we were making up ourselves. So really I didn't get much for, but it didn't matter. Once I went to teachers college, because I was interested, I did a lot of art, and it picked up there. Yeah.
Gee, so that talks a lot, and maybe this is why you ended up teaching for so long. Because imagine if that had been allowed to exist, we might not know the name Sandy Adsett today. And it talks a little bit about, I mean, Fred Graham talks about this when we interviewed him, and others have talked about the fact that the way in which art was taught, many talented people fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
So I'm having a crack at my old school here, but this is the point, right? Is that, you know, I think it says a lot about people who, like that original art teacher you had, but others who have fostered and nurtured people to stay in the art world, and they've gone on. Imagine how many more talented artists we would have. So when did you know this was something you could do potentially as a career?
Because I enjoyed art, you know, and even though I may not have had a big marker in school certificate, I still had sufficient in the other subjects to get me through, you know, and so I applied for teachers college, and when I went there and did the art there, I really then understood a lot more about art, and I could appreciate it more, and I felt I was learning things all the time as it was being extended. But it's because I enjoyed it that I decided to become.
Why did you enjoy it?
I think that I like colour. I used to be sent colouring in books from my grandparents from where I up to the farm. That with a tin of condensed milk was always the thing that you loved.
With a tin of condensed milk.
With a tin of condensed
colouring
milk.
in books with condensed milk.
Yeah, colouring in books. So I enjoyed colour, and even though we were the colouring in books were knobby and a whole lot of little images that had nothing to do with us, it didn't matter because they were just spaces that I put this colour in, and I liked that shade of green alongside that shade of orange. So I enjoyed the challenge of colour, and so it was just there. When I say just there, it's what I enjoyed doing. So when the opportunities came up to do a third year, and I applied for it, there's extra training to go into the Ministry of Ed as an art advisor to schools. I applied and lucky to get it.
Was the plan when you went to teachers college to be an art teacher?
No.
What did you think you were going to do?
I was going to become an art teacher. This is going to sound terrible. To go back to and strap the teachers' kids, the teacher that I didn't like at our native school, and come and strap his kids because he used to belt the hell out of us. You see, at the time he was a returned serviceman. I mean, afterwards I got to know them really well, and he was great. But at the time, someone said to me, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to become a teacher." I never told them why, but that was in my mind.
Was that right?
Yeah. So yeah. I didn't have much to think about it, really.
Wow. But the plan was to come home, though, and teach.
Yeah, well, that's in my mind. I'm young. I don't know. I'm talking about this when I was going to beginning at charity. I'm only 13 or 14.
Yeah, okay. But at Teachers College, so this is Ardmore we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So who else was there at this time? Because we've talked to people, when you hear these names of people who came through Ardmore, many of whom went on to become cultural icons.
Yes.
Like yourself. So who was at Ardmore at the time that you were there and potentially doing the same stuff you were doing?
Well, there was my mate Fred Murupainga, who's Selwyn Muru, and Albert Wendt was there too, and and John Goldsmith. Well, so many did art there, but so I learnt about doing English painting, old English kitchens with a kettle on the stove. That was the type of thing that we were asked to do, and you selected. But the good one was that you selected an artist with a style that you thought you were attracted to, and then we had to copy 3 paintings of that person's work to get the skill on how they were using their paintbrushes and types of colour palette that they use. So, but you were being taught about art. And
So who was the person that you followed?
oh my God, now his name's gone right out of my head.
That's okay.
He was an English artist who had he was an English artist who had country scenes of people, and lots of oranges, and he had little activities going on. His name will come to me much later, of course.
Because you talk about Albert Wendt,
Yeah.
even Selwyn Muru. I mean, these are people that we know so well now,
Yeah.
who are known for their own art,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and their own style.
And their own, so even you're it's very distinct and unique, and we know
Yeah.
a Sandy Adsett piece of work when we see it.
Yeah.
And so to know that, you have to kind of study an English painter to kind of figure out what you might want to do is kind of interesting to me.
No, it was what you found out that there was a construct for the art forms. That's similar with regardless of the culture, and it is about composition, connection, lines, how you read through a painting, and appreciation of the different color palettes. So you learnt about that and realized that even though you were doing it, you were then able to identify it and say, I use it as a checklist. If I'm doing a painting and it's not going right, I'll say, what's wrong with this painting? Is it the color? So if I think it could be that, I'll change. For 3 days I'll change that particular color, because until you wipe it out totally, for me, then I don't know whether the painting is working. And I sort of used to upset some of the students because, and if anything goes too easily for me, I thought, this is becoming. I must be doing something automatic.
Okay,
that's happening.
This is interesting because, not being an artist, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
but
I
kind
think
of
people who know art will be listening to this anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, and this is the thing, right? Because the fascinating thing about this is you kind of know when you know.
Yeah.
And you said if it's too easy, it's not right. Which for the uninitiated like me, if it's easy, you must be doing something right? So there's a complexity behind this that a lot of us don't appreciate, which is why you're a master.
No, but I'm not saying it. For me, if it's too easy, it's too automatic, and I'm not getting a challenge from it. I needed to do something so that when I finished it, I felt satisfied with it because I had to work at it. If I'm just going to paint by numbers, that's no good.
It almost sounds masochistic.
Okay.
It almost sounds like without the challenge and the pain, there isn't the reward. That's what it kind of sounds like when I hear you talk about that. It's almost like if I haven't felt something that's made me work for this, I'm not happy with it.
No,
No?
because I don't believe in that. Because people would say you have to suffer for your art, and I think I'm not suffering. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I don't want that. As a reason, I just think that it just you learn more by challenging yourself. So what I used to do if things happened like that, I'd just get some paint and throw it at the canvas, and I would just throw it there, because then I'd have to change it regardless. I had to correct and change, and then I didn't know what I had to do to make it work. So, and I know that if I work at something, eventually I'll get it to a point where I think it's working.
So please excuse the unexperienced and very low expertise of the question I'm about to ask. Which comes first, the colour or the structure?
Everything comes in its time. You start with a plan. I mean, you have a canvas that you've got to put, well, for me, because I'm a painter, I've got a canvas. I know that from the previous works that I've done, that's the thing at Charity College, all the work that we did there, we never saw it. It was never put up on the wall. It was put into a fifth form. You put your work there, fourth form there, and eventually when the thing filled up, it was emptied out, and they give you another piece of paper. So it was it's how you look at your now I'm getting lost, but it's trying to say that there is a type of outcome that the basis of it is right. You've got the canvas. I need to put something on there. The first step is I've got to decide in my mind, what am I going to, is it a tree or is it a fish? I'm just putting it like that,
Yeah.
Except I stayed with Māori things. And then if I'm doing fish, then I'm going to have fish that are swimming, or fish that are being caught, or is it a shark or inanga, whatever it is, because there is a reason for the fish. It has some movement, it has a colour, its environment offers a colour. So then I'll do a series, in that Aramona type, offering. And then once you've done that, then you tend to look at your next series and say, okay, I've done enough for this one. What did I learn from it? And I need to work in colours that are, in cream and gold or something else there, because you want to learn how these colours can offer you a satisfaction at the end of because it's how you feel about the painting. When you look at a painting, does it feel like it's a whirling pool? Does it feel like it's flowing? Is it something erupting mountain or something? You give with Māori design. I create the images. Sometimes I'll just do a pattern. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this, but I do a design, and afterwards, that worked out, and I keep changing it. And I said, now what does it look like? So I then made. I thought, I better find a word to so I build a meaning into it.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's an outcome of the plan.
Yes.
And other times it's just a little bit of serendipity that occurs as a result of the end process. Right?
Yes.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said was I always stuck with Māori art. And you mentioned Māori design a couple of times there. Why is that?
Because, well, I love colour and I love the form. And the other thing with Māori art is that, I finished teaching in 82. I was 82. And I sort of ended up committing myself to our own art form. I thought, I talked about how, when as a colonised people, things that are, that are taken from you, and for me the damaging part. Okay, they came in and they were acquiring land, but the other ones that for me that were a big influence on our culture were the missionaries that followed, and they brought in another belief, and that belief then treated our art as heathen art, and so I thought, that this is this is our identity. Art is our identity.
Yeah.
I remember talking with Pene Taiapa, and we were young contemporary, and he accepted what we said. What he saw with contemporary with art, he said that if our language goes, our visual language will be there to still identify us and express ourselves as a people. You see, so I thought, no, I don't want to let this go, because so I committed myself to it, and I then refused to use, because before I used to do landscapes and portraits and things. I thought, I'm not going to use any images that are non-Māori. So I wouldn't use letters or numbers or anything, because I said that's from another culture, the shape of a letter.
There's a couple of things. By the way, you're listening to Master Tuhunga, Sandy Adsett. We're here at his house in Mayfair, Hastings in the Hawke's Bay. You're listening to Māpuna on RNZ National. A couple of things there, Matua, if I can pick up on, if that's okay. One of them, you talked about colour. When I asked you about Māori art and design, you talked about colour, because people always think Māori colour, red, white, black, go to college colours. But that's not how you see it. No. Which is kind of interesting.
Well, the thing is that for me, when you end up, when I was looking at the old traditional kōwhaiwhai patterns, and where the use of colour was, and we talk about the tapu and noa, the two contrasting colour, either two weightings of colour. There's this heavy weighting and a lighter weighting. So for me, and when I look at a square, half that, if I put a koru pattern, just a simple one in there, it has to fill half the space. So there's the positive or the noa, say it was the weight of the koru, then the negative space, I can divide it up into red, black, blue if I wanted to. It's still the dark colour. So it's the weighting of the colours between the two that allowed me the construct of what I use now with mostly when I'm creating a Māori pattern. I want to continue with the belief that went with it, which was lost with the change of, as I say, beliefs that happened. So,
and the other thing I wanted to pick up on was you mentioned Pene Taiapa.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here with Sawamuru's son, by the way, Tama, which our audience will know because I mention him every show. Yeah. But for us, people like his dad and you, and many others, are the vanguard of Māori, contemporary Māori art, if I can put it that way. With the Pene Taiapas of the world, the vanguard for people like you.
Each generation has their offering that relates to your generation. So with Pene, you see he did so many whare nui, etc. And he could tell the stories. It's the stories that are behind his art that excited us all the time. That's what we felt and we believed. It didn't matter if we thought of it as the truth. It was what was given as a means of identifying the type of work that they did for their time. So now, because I've been teaching for so long, and you're going through the generations, so the ones that are doing work now, I said, fine, but remember there's going to be another generation coming up. You need to say the reasons why you're creating, if it's Māori art, and with our course it was a Māori arts course, you were creating this work to identify us as a culture, if that's what you're doing, or the influence of the culture. So each time you have to say, who did you learn it from, what was their story, and then the one before that. So I keep saying there's so many generations. So for me, I feel that by giving them a means, or the younger ones, a means of understanding why I made the decisions I did, was as a result of my response to the time that people like Pene gave me. Their 100 meeting hours, that's amazing. And each time for different tribal groups, and he had a great way of doing things. He said when he was asked to go over to Taranaki do a whare there, and he said what he used to do would go there, and he said, you want me to do your whare? Yes. I said, okay, I'll do it as long as I'm exempt from any of your tapu. Whatever I do is you need to accept from me, because that's the way. And he was the expert, you see, and they wanted him. So but he said he cleared the path, so he wasn't controlled by that. And he, as I say, it's even now with the works that we do. But I always say, let's just screw it into the the core 5/5 pattern, anything, screw it on the wall, but make sure that they know, and put everything at the back, all the information, who you were, the year, and then so that and with the knowledge that it doesn't stay there forever. If the next generation want to take it off and show themselves when that whare it belongs, then you do that. You keep it, because it needs to continue to have a it identifies it. It's who we are.
Yeah.
And it has to change with us, but it needs to have a means to grow. And
Wow.
you've got to give that freedom. You don't want to be blocked by someone and say, oh, we can't do that. That's not our tradition.
Yeah.
It is if you've got a means of saying, but we were told you could do this or the next thing.
See, that's interesting, because people think, well, because it's been there for so long, he tapu,
Yeah.
it'll be breaking a tikanga if you
Yeah.
change. Well, what you're saying is, and this can be challenging for people who are listening, Matua, as I'm sure you know.
Well, but I've been around a long time, and but the thing is, it's more about, it may be challenging, and I hope it is challenging, because then if it's challenging, there's something to do that has to be done.
Yeah.
But it's just to free it for the new generation, so that they can do that, but they know they're only doing it for their generation.
Yeah.
The next one on is going to, and they have to engage it. I remember Cliff, talking about the historic places, and he said he had this dilemma with, historic places they preserve and they renew and do everything. And for him, he said, the whare was a person, and when its time came, it went back to Mother Earth. You didn't keep it going. You shove another tube in it. It served its purpose for the people that were there for that time.
Yeah.
So it's I think that's where we need to ensure that our culture is a culture with the means to. Yeah.
I've done a lot of interviews, but I've never heard it said like that before, which makes perfect sense. Now that you say it that way,
Yeah.
makes perfect sense to me. Never heard it said like that before. Wow.
Well, a lot of these things, I've sort of got to know in the last 20 years.
Really?
Well, before that, it's not until the challenges of of the computer graphics and everything that are coming in that they say, so what about these? And I said, okay, the images are there, and the design quality is there. And I'm talking about the students that went through Toi Marangi, Bob's student. We've got this thing with Toi where we said, if I with our students, etc., look at and they're applying for something, if I support them, he will too, because we respect each other's approach, and say, well, this is, and it's not banding together, but it is of a necessity, because that it
So and I just want to mention, Tōmairangi is, you taught Tōmairangi 20, how many years? 20?
Yeah, we've been down there 20 years with as a course.
Yeah, you started that, and I want to get this right, you started that early 2000s, is that right?
2002.
Down here in Hawke's Bay?
Yes.
Because you were formerly up at Toi Haukura in Gisborne.
Yes.
Then you came home. You got pulled home, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah,
And by home I mean Hawke's Bay, but pulled back here.
Well, even though where I was before,
Yeah.
Ropunga was, Pauera was in that area too, so it didn't matter. But you do understand,
I guess
if they ask, it's like, hey, you should go back and support it.
Yeah, and this is the thing I was going to mention, because what I felt like I was hearing from you, particularly as you were talking about things like the challenges that you go through and all that kind of stuff, is responsibility, particularly when you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Is the responsibility, you talked about pene taiapa,
Yeah.
the responsibility to that next generation and generations on from there. Is that something that's always been in the back of your mind, about the responsibility of not just producing the high quality work that you do, but also teaching the next generation so that those challenges they can deal with in the time when they come up for them?
Yeah.
And was that behind Tōmairangi? Is that why Tōmairangi started?
No, Tōmairangi started because, as I say, I was asked to come back here into Kaungunu, and I thought, I think I.
Time to
The
come
other
home.
thing, and because I came back, the whānau are here. My nieces are here, etc. And that was important. It's really the over that time, how I thought of things at Toihokura, I think differently down here. It's just we went into a degree course, and that meant that there was a different type of output. You needed to have a tohu that could do the things that was necessary for them, but at the same time you're still preaching your own sort of kaupapa, or saying commit yourself. If you're able to commit yourself to at least our culture and enjoy what's there, because we can enjoy it as much as any other art form. And
Yeah. You told me something fascinating earlier off audio, if I can put it that way. It's not the right way of putting it, but earlier before we started recording, that you've only ever done 2 of your own exhibitions.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because an exhibition, I suppose, is to do a whole series of works. You had to have a certain number. I didn't think of wanting to produce a whole lot of works just to produce an exhibition. The 2 exhibition was a requirement of Massey when I was doing the masters. You see, so that's when I did that. But previous to that, we just exhibited as a group. Initially, when we first started out, as like Ralph and Putter and Cliff and Clive, Katarina, we said, when we're doing our art forms, if we have to put on an exhibition somewhere, if you call out, we'll support. We committed ourselves. If you ask for work, we'll send you work. So
I just want to be clear who we're talking about here. You said Cliff, that's Cliff Whiting. You said Ralph, that's Ralph Hortere. Katarina Mataira.
Yeah.
Who was the other one you mentioned?
There's Paramatcha.
Paramatcha.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, we sort of, yeah. Well, we were working in, we had all gone into education under this advisory thing, so we were there as a team. But we said, people would say, why don't we try and have exhibitions around the place? So the first one I was involved in was 1966 in Hamilton, and they asked for some works to go there. So I did. We set them off. And anyway, the trouble with those early exhibitions, they never sent your work back. We said, where's the work? But they, as our own crew, they used to just say, no, we can't afford to send them. We're keeping these. So I remember I'm going. I know the one in Hamilton. I went to Taumaranui a few years later, and I was at. We went around Don Selwyn's place, and my painting was on the wall. And I said, "Oh, is that where it ended up?" He said, "Yep." But the thing is, it was fine. We did a lot of exchange of works during that time, because it was.
You do realise these things could be worth thousands nowadays, right? You know that, eh?
It doesn't matter because it was important for the time, and hey, the relationships that you got and the things that grew from those are way more valuable than things and what they are valued at.
It's just when you mention those names, I just hear them and go, oh my gosh, you're all legends. Legend's not the right word, because that's not the word we throw out there. Yeah, icons, masters, and Kata Tino Kataira. I mean, oh my gosh, these are people that people like me have looked up to for years. So to hear you talk about that is amazing. But the reason why I mentioned about the exhibitions is because it's curious to me that someone who is indefatigable and is as industrious as you are, I think there's another reason why you don't do the exhibitions. This is just me thinking about it. Because, and I'm just...
You tell me, maybe you can answer me at the same time.
Well, I think there's a huge sense of humility that you have. And that you'd much rather... No?
No, it's not about a humility, it's a reality. Yeah, people that say, "Are you an artist?" I say, "I'm a painter." I mean, the word artist means what? You know, so I'm happy to be called a painter, but an artist sort of is like a label, you know. Whereas, and so I don't think they're. When I think of Penny and those ones, you know, they never thought of themselves. We never thought of them. They were people who you admired because you related to the work that they did and the reason for why they did. So it's more about, you
driven by kaupapa.
So you're the whakairo person, you're a raranga person, you know. So for me, I'm a painter.
Yeah. And driven by a kaupapa.
It is now because I haven't got much time left, so I want to focus. You know, I just believe, and as I said, now we're retired.
Yeah.
I'm doing work that is more thoughtful, in for many ways, not only the discipline of the art form, but the story that I can have in the art that I know relates, because my focus now is on whakapapa of colour. You know, I'm not looking at the design, I'm looking at at what the interpretation of that tapu no meaning is. And so I do the colour and then I apply designs in a way that connects the colours together, not create the design and then put the colour in.
So how much of that would be a variation from the work that we know when we see a Sandy Adsett painting and we know it's Sandy Adsett? We're still going to be able to identify them because I you know, I'm not qualified or an expert in any way, shape or form, but I know when I see one of your work because I can tell.
Okay, so what I think there is certainly a style of technique that you use, you know, when you're doing your work. So regardless of any shape that I put in there, there would be a size, a directional offering, a double line. You know, these are the things that I have as a means of creating a flow through a space. I could look at a space and say, now it could be a curvilinear sort of offering that does this, or it can be a rectilinear form, but it needs to do this. There's a difference between the two forms. So, you know, it's how you approach it. If you were able to, your belief is that you could recognize it, then you should be able to still recognize that application of how you approach. How many quarters do you do in a koiri that goes back on, turns back on itself? You know, I believe that or the size to keep it relevant to, I can't put too many in because it'll get too small and then it loses its means of having a purpose. I always say to our students, any line you put in as soon as you put on your work, it has to be there for a reason. It has a thickness to it, it has a length to it, it has a direction to it. How you do it for that first time is then setting the composition for the rest of the painting. So there is an approach. Okay. And I think the core five is definitely that. Yeah. When you look at our heke and you look at the the carvings and you look at the tukutu, three totally different art forms, wall to ceiling to floor. The whole thing is chocked together. Yeah. You know, we can accept it. You go into a gallery and they try and space out all the artworks. They'll say, hey, we're used to up against each other.
Continuous flow.
Yeah, well, I mean, and because it works for us. We need the tapu part, we need the noa part. Yeah. It has to connect in some way.
Yeah. As I said, we're talking to Sandy Adsett, renowned painter, Māori painter. at his house here in Mayfair, in Hastings, in Te Matawa Māui in Hawke's Bay. What does a painter do with their art now, considering they don't do their own exhibitions?
I don't know what the ones now do. I know what I do, and
What do you do with them?
with the art I'm doing,
Yeah.
I'm leaving it for the family. I've got this moko, and I say this is, I want to give them a means of, I suppose, if the work can support them with their own endeavours. So that's what I worked. I'll just, that's.
Are you working at it every day, Matua Sandy? Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. There's no Monday to Friday. It's a all the time. We don't. There's no such thing as a weekend when you're retired. They're all the same. So it's but I enjoy it, and I enjoyed doing my job as a koro, and I know my place, and anyway, as I get older, they said, "Get out of the way. You're in the road." You see, so you at times you say, yeah, what can I do? But yeah.
Does that have an influence, therefore, on the art or on the kaupapa of the work that you're doing, knowing that it might eventually be for a wider audience, but it's specifically for whānau, and what they can do with that piece once, in a very long time from now, when you shuffle off this mortal coil, does that have an influence on the way on what you think about and what you're doing now? Because it's for something. Oh no.
No, I look at it day to day, how things are, and I said, as an old person, you can be grumpy and argumentative. You can change your mind and say, did I say that? Because I said, I waited a long time to be able to just do that and not, so I said, their time will come. But I said, you'll remember. So I'm enjoying what I'm doing because I'm doing it at my own pace.
Yeah.
And about things that I want to do.
Is some of it what you've been thinking about doing for a long time but couldn't because you weren't retired and you were still teaching? No?
No, I didn't think about it because when I was teaching, I was enjoying teaching. Okay. It was fulfilling. And I thought that by teaching anyway, and it was all about retaining our visual identity as a culture, and one that was recognisably ours in its Māori. I said, so for me, if they say what's Māori art, I said, well, if it has, if the person is whakapapa is Māori, regardless of how much there is a Māori that's inherent in them that they can have to it's not reinforced, but it's this ownership that that you are responsible for, then that's responsible to the culture.
Do you think New Zealand as a country has a greater appreciation for Māori? I'm going to say Māori art, so apologies for that.
That's all.
We have a greater appreciation for that as a country now, or not?
No, I don't think so. But I believe that if we as Māori are now, ensuring that when the work they produce work and they're saying that that they're Māori and an artist, that what they're offering is positive for Māori. To worry about. I remember in the early days there, we took an exhibition away, and Kim Hill rang me when I was up, and I was in the office, and the students all around, and she questioned me on why these particular artists didn't want to be part of the exhibition that was travelling away, and it was the Tuakatoa exhibition to the States, and they didn't want to be part of it. I knew what she was wanting. She was wanting to say, because the comment was that they want to be seen as artists, not Māori artists, you see, and whether this was sort of labelling them a bit. And at the time I said, hey, they're our mates. That's their choice. We respect that. And so she cut it off pretty quickly because she wanted something to, be contentious about. But you sort of, after a while, see and hear those things, that may not be said, but you know. And so for things now and how it's going, I think our ones are comfortable, our own artists, the younger ones, are comfortable in knowing that their art is strong. It has all the quality of what good art is. You know, there is an offering. There is I could say there's 10 curtains up there, you know, different patterns. You'll pick one, you'll pick, someone will pick one, I'll pick another one. We all have a choice, you know, that we relate to colours or forms or sizes, but at least, you know, you can still have within our own form these offerings that don't have to necessarily look like, as Arnold used to say before, when is a template not a template. I could correct him over the years for that, because you know that template is a construct that we had as part of a belief of tapu no.
Yeah.
So it's sort of but it's a handy way of, I mean, that comment is
Yeah. Gee, I could keep going on this for ages.
no.
I could. We could do hours of this.
Yeah, it's all good.
I should bring a camera next time. So there'll be some. We'll have to edit this somehow to get less than the hour. But there's so much more I want to ask, but I won't, because we, as I said, we could be here for days. There's an old phrase that I hear a lot: "He toi mana, he toi tangata," which I think talks to when you talk about pene taiapa and that approach that pene taiapa has, and that you have, that that our Māori world could still be retained if we lose the language through our identity and our mahi toi and painting and artwork. And I think you're right. He reo tō te mahi toi, he reo tō te mahi paita, that it has its language and can identify us, and I think that's really important. And I think it's awesome, and this is may appear flippant, but I think it's awesome that you're still doing the mahi. I do. I think it's great, because and we may never see the fruits of that labour, because your whānau might decide that's our time. And I, you know, purely out of selfish and self-centred reasons, I hope that's not the case. No. Because
well, I've got a travelling exhibition at the moment, and each place it goes to, I ensure that there is a current work in it. You know, so that's why. You
can see we did our research. We didn't even know. Where there's a travelling in Aotearoa?
Yes.
Really? Where? What's it called?
It's called Toi Koru.
Oh, I've heard of it. I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Toi Koru. Yeah. We must go seek that out. Okay.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, and there's a reason for it, because it's a retrospective. Yeah. You see, in like 60 years or something, and. So to put current into work, it just keeps it relating to the idea of it, a retrospective of work.
I want to thank you, Matua Sandy. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us. Hey, and we didn't even mention the tension between Kohungunu and Ngāpuhi once.
No. Funny that.
First time in weeks, I have to say, there hasn't been a jab at Ngāpuhi. And I've just made one at my own expense. Yeah. We wish you all the best.
Thanks.
Thank you for just inspiring people like me who are proud to be Māori. And when we think about visual expressions of our identity and culture, yes, we talk about language and things like that, but when you try and explain it without using words, you can just point at one of your paintings and go, well, there it is there. You know, if you're trying to explain it to someone who has no idea, what is Māori, you can go, bang, that's all, that's what it is. So, thank you for taking the time, and as I say, we wish you all the best.
Okay.
Ngā mihi nui kia ora.
Kia ora.